Hello, this is John Jordan from PocketGamer.biz, and this is our weekly news roundup for the week ending the 10th of October 2014. So, one of the things this week we've been I guess we always look at what I call M&A activity, mergers and acquisitions, and it's been an interesting kind of survey, like a roundup of what's been happening during the Q3 period, so that's between July and September 2014, from DigiCapital. And it's kind of interesting, they do this every quarter, so even if there's nothing interesting happening in the quarter, the interesting thing is often the comparisons with other quarters. So they've been looking, they look across the whole games industry, but specifically they've been breaking down into what's happening in mobile games. And what they've kind of been looking at is it's a record quarter in terms of M&A activity during Q3. Now, that's kind of not to be, no one should be really surprised about that because we've seen some really massive deals. But if you strip out those deals, actually the level is running at pretty much the same as previous years, which kind of makes you kind of wonder, are we seeing something different, or is it right to strip out these 5 big deals? So if you look at the big deals, I mean, there's no surprise here. This kind of stuff we've seen. So Microsoft buying Minecraft for $2.5 billion. And we've had Amazon buying Twitch for almost $1 billion. We've had some kind of Chinese stuff going on in China. So a Chinese company, Giant Interactive, they were on the stock exchange and they took themselves private. And that was like a $1.6 billion deal. Let's have a quick look down. And obviously, obviously, so it's checking Facebook and Oculus earlier in the quarter. So there's these 5 kind of big deals. And the interesting thing that I guess now is for kind of journalists like me who like to use the term bubble. Well, I guess all journalists like to use the term bubble when it comes to financials, but often we're using it in the proper manner, and analysts like DigiCapital kind of frown upon people like me using the term bubble all the time. But when you kind of have these massive deals happening, and I guess the interesting thing in all those cases is those deals have kind of been questioned in terms of their long-term kind of value for the buying company. So will Microsoft generate $2.5 billion or more of profit off the Minecraft deal? That's the kind of long-term question. And the Microsoft deal, you could argue the Minecraft deal is one of the better deals that's happened there. Will Amazon ever generate $1 billion in profit off Twitch, which at the moment is not generating any profit at all? So so that's kind of the stuff that's been kind of interesting me. In terms of our kind of general Pocket Gamer more I guess hard news activity, stuff that's actually happening, there has been another kind of interesting deal, and it's a company that probably you guys won't have heard very much of, partly because they've just changed their name. But there's a company called SponsorPay who were very big in the PC user acquisition kind of scene a couple of years ago. A German company, as lots of these companies tend to be, because obviously the PC web browser game business is very big in Germany. And then they moved over to mobile, and recently, obviously because they knew this big deal was coming, they changed the name from SponsorPay to Fiber. And they've just announced that they've been bought by kind of an interesting Korean-German company called RNTS Media. Not particularly well known. They are floated on the Luxembourg Stock Exchange. But it was a kind of a weird announcement. It was announced that the deal was happening, but as sometimes happens, the price was not disclosed. If you had a look around on the RNTS website, you could see that they'd raised about $50 million in shares, and through raising cash and putting out new shares, which is obviously to buy SponsorPay, now called Fiber. But after that was kind of came out, then they kind of put out a further statement actually disclosing that deal was $190 million. So again, this is a kind of company that people have never really heard of, but who've been doing sterling kind of effort helping people kind of buy users, and now have been bought for $190 million. So in a sense, when we're looking at these big kind of mergers and acquisitions, and Amazon spending almost $1 billion buying Twitch, we could say, is that a bubble deal? But perhaps these kind of smaller deals in terms of kind of monetary values, obviously $190 million being smaller than $970 million. But are those actually where the bubble's happening? So I guess this is kind of one thing we have to look to see at the end of the year, when people like DigiCapital kind of do their 2014 comparison to 2013. That'll be where we'll really see kind of what's happening. In terms of kind of more general Pocket Gamer kind of coverage, our charticle was kind of interesting this week. We were looking at World of Tanks Blitz. So obviously World of Tanks, massively successful, could be argued one of the most successful PC franchises over the last 5 years. Finally come to mobile. It's kind of even in its Blitz form, which is a cut down, not a cut down version, but a kind of streamlined, should we say, version for for mobile devices. It's kind of done okay actually. Surprisingly, not surprisingly, has a very highly tuned monetization kind of flow, which is a bit different to other games. So you kind of have XP, and you can there's this kind of different ways of using XP and different types of XP, and you can kind of buy different kind of timed subscription levels to get those different kind of levels of XP, which help you either generally level up or level up faster through the tech tree to open up various tanks. Obviously called World of Tanks, all about tanks. But the interesting thing, I guess, certainly from a personal point of view, is the download for the game is actually 1.4 gigabytes, so that's quite large for most people. You know, for the smallest iPad like the one I have, that's basically 10% of your available storage is in that one game. So it was quite interesting to see that it has done pretty well, has been in the top 100 top grossing. Probably hasn't got that many downloads in comparison to its top grossing, which is kind of due to how good the monetization is. Going back to something that I've kind of banged on about a bit in previous weeks, but it is kind of related. So we've still been looking at the adoption rate for iOS 8, which is the new operating system from Apple, which has obviously come about to a degree with the new iPhone 6s. Now this is kind of subject that I've banged on about, and I kind of given up banging on about it because I kind of thought it was like a bit of a dead subject really. But now it's transpired that Apple were quite keen on 3 days after launch to suggest that, according to their estimates, which was taken off people using the App Store, that quite a high percentage of people had updated, which we hadn't really seen from third-party data tracking services like Fisku, who were so Apple was suggesting kind of in the 40% had updated very quickly, whereas Fisku was saying it was kind of in the 20s to 30s. But now, 3 weeks after the iOS 8 has been available, unfortunately for Apple, that they have updated their figures, but they from the previous number, they've moved from 46 to 47% of people on the App Store who've been using the App Store have updated to iOS 8, which clearly suggests that basically nothing's changed. That's kind of what we've seen in Fisku as well from their data, that the kind of adoption rate has kind of slowed, almost plateaued. So now with iOS 8, we're kind of seeing it's at the same adoption rate from launch as iOS 5, and much less than iOS 6 and 7, which is not necessarily a bad thing. Obviously, it's a big download. It's about 6 gigabytes of available space you need to download it if you're doing it over the air, which is, I guess, what a certain proportion of people are doing. But it is interesting, I guess, for kind of iOS developers who have never really had to deal with OS fragmentation level before. Obviously, on Android, it's systemic kind of in terms of hardware and software. You just have to deal with it. But on iOS, people have generally gone for iOS because there's been very clean hardware. And basically everyone, well, at least the majority of people, have been on the most up-to-date iOS mark. So that hasn't happened yet, and it'll be interesting to see kind of when the majority of people will be using iOS 8. It will make things a bit easier for developers. So let's have a quick, what else do we have going on this week? So yes, the other thing, our Mavens group, they're a group of experts who like to debate things. They were looking at Windows 10, so that was announced last week. Obviously it's not out to 2015, but not really a lot of takers. People seem to think that Microsoft is not going to gain much traction on the phone space. So we've done a lot of kind of high level stuff this week, but come back next week and see what the news is then. Thank you.